Good morning again. It was good to be with you all yesterday. How many of you were here yesterday? I know there were several people. Yeah, it was good to be here. So today is just going to be a kind of a follow-up to that, a little more general for everybody, but it's certainly very applicable in our homes and in our marriages as well. So before we do that, I just want to take a moment to pray. Father God, I thank you for the privilege of sharing with these folks this weekend. I thank you for the privilege of making music with my family, music that hopefully glorifies and honors you. I pray, Lord, that you would just bless the words I say today and help them to be received in the spirit they're meant, Lord, for your kingdom, for your honor, and for your glory. Amen. All right, so question. Don't be afraid to raise your hand. How many of you have ever been hurt before? Huh? All right. How many of you have hurt somebody else before? All right. How many of you have ever had any regrets? All right. So for those of you that didn't raise your hand, I figure that I've either put you to sleep already, that you've just broken the commandment about bearing false witness, or possibly you were raised Methodist and are scared to death to raise your hands in church. I'm not sure which one, but it's got to be one of those, because the reality of it is every one of us have been hurt. Every one of us has hurt someone else, and every one of us has regrets. I'm reminded of a quote from one of my favorite all-time movies. Let's see if you can guess what movie this is from. Life is pain, princess. Anyone who tells you different is selling something. The Princess Bride, yeah. Now, I'm not sure I quite agree with that, but there's a lot of truth in it. I believe life is good, but because we are alive, we experience pain. I know shortly before my dad passed away, he had a sore on the bottom of his foot that would not heal. And being diabetic, that was a big concern. And the nurse was examining it, and he was wincing in pain. And I remember her saying, that is actually a good thing, because if you didn't feel anything, that would be dead. Where there is life, there will be pain. That's just a part of life. That doesn't make us a bad person. That just makes us human and alive. That's all that is about. So as a result of your hurts, as a result of your regrets, do you ever have a sense of shame that has made you want to hide? Yeah. We can hide in many ways. We are rather good hiders. You know, when Adam and Eve first sinned, the first thing they did was cover themselves up, and then they heard God coming and they hid. You know, that's our natural inclination, that fear, that shame, that insecurity, that vulnerability. It makes us want to hide. And we do that in many ways. We can do that hiding behind pride, denial, addiction, blame, negativity towards self or others. How many of you, I'm so stupid, I'm so dumb, negative self-talk. Or saying that about others, gossiping, unforgiveness, indifference, insecurity, fear, workaholism, bury ourselves in our work so we don't have to think about it, perfectionism, or self-righteousness steeped in religion. All of that, we can hide behind all of that and a whole lot more. That list is not exhaustive. So I think the question is, what are we going to do with our pain? What are we going to do with it? Because we all have it. If you feel stuck in any of those lists, or maybe if you feel stuck in something else that wasn't listed there, but something that you're hiding from your pain. I shared yesterday, I said, it's kind of like when we maybe have a broken arm and it's in a sling and we're walking through a crowd and we're doing everything we can to protect that arm from getting bumped because it hurts. And that's the same way. We want to hide because we think that is going to keep us from hurting. But all we're doing is numbing that pain and not dealing with the cause of it when we hide. So if you feel stuck there, That's exactly where the enemy wants you. He wants you to be stuck there. John 10:10 said that the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Jesus said in John 10:10, but I came that you may have life, and I love this version, have it in abundance to the full till it overflows. Pastor Randy Drawn at Midtown Fellowship Nashville says that we should be so full of the love of Christ that when somebody bumps into us, it just spills out over the top of the brim and onto them. Or we should be like a sponge that is so saturated that when somebody touches it, barely touches it, they get wet because there's nowhere else for that water to go. That's what living in abundance to the full till it overflows looks like. You may be a Christian, and deal with this. But are you living in the abundant life? And I don't think you can live abundantly when you're hiding your pain, trying to deal with it on your own. So when you're living in the abundant life, there's blessing. But when you're not, the enemy will steal your joy, he will kill your potential, and he will destroy the very purpose that God has for you. There's a formula. You didn't know you were going to do math today, but I think in your bulletins there's a formula that I want to share with you. And it's up there on the screen. Your greatest hurt plus Jesus' redemptive sacrifice equals your greatest kingdom impact. Your greatest work plus Jesus' redemptive sacrifice equals your greatest kingdom impact. The enemy wants you to hide behind shame and regret. Ultimately, because he's a coward. He's scared of you when you know this truth and you walk that out. So how does the enemy keep you from walking this out? He keeps you doing that by focusing on your pain because he knows that where your focus goes, your energy flows. Whatever you're focused on. Sometimes I think we're so consumed about not being prideful or not being whatever, and we're giving that attention and feeding that very thing. We need to starve that. We need to focus on Christ and starve those methods that we use to numb, to hide, to avoid dealing with our pain. Jesus said, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny himself, must pick up his cross daily and follow me. For Jesus, his cross indeed was his biggest purpose, the literal cross that he shed his blood on and died as the perfect sacrifice for our sins. That was his ultimate purpose. Everything in life, his life led to that point, and all life springs out of that. We have life because of that. That was his greatest purpose. So, the cross was the means by which he lived that out. And I would submit to you that your greatest pain, like we shared, plus Jesus' redemptive sacrifice, is your greatest ministry. It is your greatest opportunity to bring the kingdom of God to the world. There is a cycle of change that they talk about in counseling, and I think in order to deal with your pain appropriately, you've got to walk through that. And it is this, there's 5 things. Some people say 6, and I'll go over all 6, but I've got the 5 listed there. So the first step in the cycle of change is your pre-contemplation. That basically means you're clueless. You're walking around, you don't even know there's a problem. Well, I didn't do anything wrong. I don't have a problem. I feel fine, whatever. You don't even know. Well, I'm better than this person. I'm not as bad as this person, whatever. You're not dealing, you're not even allowing yourself to acknowledge there's issues you need to work on. So then we go to contemplation, and that is where you start to get aware that something needs changed here. And usually it's pain that brings that on. Physically you got a problem, you feel pain, and that's an indication that something's wrong. It's the same way spiritually. It's the same way emotionally. If there's pain there, that's saying, hey, there's life here that you need to live, but you got to deal with it if you want to live fully and abundantly. So that's the pre-contemplation. So then the preparation is like, okay, so I got to deal with this. So how do I do it? So maybe you need to lose weight, and you look for a weight loss plan. Or maybe you just have some baggage that you have not set right in your mind. I know people that are stuck, that are in their 70s and 80s. I know a lady who was supposed to be babysitting her younger brother when she was 16 years old, and a young man came by and stole her attention, and her friend backed over her little brother and killed him. She is almost 80 years old, and she is stuck as that 16-year-old as far as her relationship goes. They're all surface level. She's always trying to fix things. She's apologizing for everything, and she puts so much undue stress on her and on others because of the trauma that she did not deal with when she was 16. My wife is working with a young woman right now, a middle-aged woman actually, who is dealing with anorexia. And it's trauma that she experienced when she was a young woman and has had a hard time putting into place, and that's how it's manifesting. The enemy wants to keep us down. He wants to keep us identifying with our trauma and focusing on our pain so that we don't focus on Christ. Because if we're going to pick up our cross daily and follow him, we have got to be focused on Jesus. And if we're focused on him, we're not looking at our pain. We're not looking at our shame. We're putting that behind us and walking toward him. So the next when we prepare, so we find some solutions. So then we got to put it into action. Now, a lot of people will get stuck right there in the preparation, like, this is too hard, I can't do this. But some people say, hey, I'm going to do this. The action part is why January 2nd, the gyms are full. But about March 2nd, they're back to about 20% capacity because people decide it's too hard. They get stuck and they revert back. So they're aware, but they're not wanting to deal with it. They're wanting to find the right pill or the right solution to mask their pain so that they don't have to deal with it. So then after action, if you continue through the action, then you accomplish your goal, you get healthy in whatever way it is, and then there's the maintenance phase, and that is you got to keep doing what you were doing to get healthy, to stay healthy. A lot of people have a hard time maintaining, but that's what you've got to do to stay there. So then the sixth one is basically you're moving on. You conquered that, you're maintaining, and you're going to the next thing. Because the reality of it is we are all messed up, and we never stop figuring out how messed up we are until we take our final breath. This Christian walk is a continual sanctification toward Christ. But we are never fully sanctified until we quit breathing and we are with him. Statistics show only 10% of the people will make it through the maintenance phase. Are you stuck? Are you in the 90% that are stuck? If you are, the enemy wants you to be ashamed of that. He doesn't want you raising your hand and admitting that. He wants you to continue to mask up, hide behind your walls, numb your pain with whatever it takes. It is hard to move through that because it takes picking up your cross, which is self-denial. We'd rather pretend we don't have a problem. But that's what it requires. It requires two huge things if you're going to do this. It requires denying yourself, which Jesus said, picking up your cross and follow him. It also requires forgiveness. Sometimes the biggest person we have to forgive is ourselves. We seem to be more hard on ourselves than we are on others a lot of times. But we need to be able to forgive ourselves, receive the forgiveness that Christ offers us. We need to be able to forgive others for their wrongs. And we need to be able to receive the forgiveness that others extend to us for our wrongs if we want to live the abundant life. So how does God set us free? I think for me that the center, the core of that question is 2 Corinthians 5:21. He made him who knew no sin to be sin on our behalf, so that we might become the righteousness of God in him. You know, when I was a kid, I used to hear that God took my sins, that he bought my sins, that he washed my sins away. And that is all true. But in my estimation, walking through this, that's an incomplete truth. Because Jesus didn't just wash my sins away, he became my sin so that I could become his righteousness. And that's the same for every one of you. He became your sin so that you could become his righteousness. So you know what that means? That means that when you are unforgiving, you're struggling with that. You're saying, I have a claim on that. I have a claim on that offense. I have a right to be hurt. I have a right to hold on and not receive forgiveness. I have a right to that. But no, you don't. Because what does this say? Jesus became it. That means he owns it and you don't. But when we understand that truth, we are free to walk without shame. We can forgive ourselves. We can forgive others. We can receive the forgiveness we need and walk in the peace of our calling and the purpose of our calling. Forgiveness is the key that releases us into purpose and allows us to view our hurts through the lens of the gospel rather than through the lens of our selfishness. I think the perfect example of this is found in Genesis, the last chapter in the book of Genesis. So for those of you that may not be familiar with this story, just a quick recap. There was a guy named Isaac that had 12 sons, 10 from one wife and 2 from his favorite wife, which is a formula for disaster right there. So he has this favorite son, Joseph, the oldest son of his favorite wife. And so he makes him this coat, this special coat, and he just pampers him and lavishes love upon him. And his other sons know that. So they are already resenting it. And then Joseph starts having dreams, like he tells his brothers. It's one thing to have the dreams, but it was really probably not too smart on his part to be telling his brothers these things. But he's like, I dreamed that I was a star, and you all were stars too, but you circled around me and bowed down to me. I've dreamed that I was a sheath of wheat, and so were you, and you circled around me and bowed down to me. Now, he's already daddy's favorite, and he starts to having dreams like that. Little brother is going to be toast. And that's exactly what happened. So the 10 brothers are out working in the fields. Guess where little brother is? He's hanging out with dad. He's the, what do they call that now? The privileged child. He's the privileged child. So dad sends him out to check on the brothers. They see him coming. They know it's him because he's got this fancy coat on. So they concoct this plan to kill him. But then one of the brothers talks him out of it. So they take his coat, rip it up, put some sheep blood on it, take it back to dad, convince him that he died. But they threw him in a pit and waited. And then some slave traders rode through. They weren't driving. They were riding, I guess, or walking. And they sold him into slavery. They thought they were done with him. So he ends up in jail because of a crime he didn't commit. And it was there that people started realizing that he had the gift of interpreting dreams. So he interprets this dream for this guy who was in jail for a short time, and he went back to work for Pharaoh. And Joseph said, hey, when you get back to Pharaoh, tell him about me. And this guy's like, okay, sure. And then he promptly forgot until Pharaoh was having these bad dreams and nobody could tell him what they were. So this guy's like, oh, yeah, there was this guy back in the pen. And they bring him. He tells Pharaoh his dream. He says, we're going to have 7 years of plenty. We're going to have 7 years of famine. So Pharaoh puts him in charge, second in command, and puts him in charge over making sure they have enough grain so that they're not starving. Right? And so Joseph does this. And at some point during the famine, all these people, not just from his own country, are coming to get fed, but from other countries. And he hears these familiar voices in this familiar language, and he realizes his brothers are there. Now, they have no clue that little brother is now second in command, and he's working with this grain. But he finally tricks them and ends up getting them back and saves them from starvation. So the whole family comes, moves to Egypt, they're saved. So Genesis chapter 50, verse 20, Dad dies, and the old brothers are thinking, they wouldn't be thinking they're having to come to Jesus because this was the pre-incarnate Christ, but they're thinking it is going to hit the fan now that Dad's gone. And so they come to him, and they're basically begging for their lives. And what does Joseph say? He says, what you meant for evil, God will use for the best. Now, I used to that was kind of the verse to me. What was meant for evil, God will use for good. That sounds like a complete truth, and that was all that I heard. But I was reading through this at some point, and I realized, man, that's only half the verse. The best half is on the back half. The best half is the so that. You tried to harm me, but God made it turn out for the best so that he could save these people. And so he is now doing. What was meant for evil, God will use for good so that many lives will be saved. One translation says, your pain that you're holding on to, that you're not forgiving, that you feel like you have a right to claim because you've been offended, you've been hurt. People, we live in a culture that is fueled by offense, and look how it's burning down. We need to learn to submit our pain to the Father who already owns it, that we have no claim to that. Because the great thing is, the reason why Jesus, or the enemy, the devil, wants to keep you focused on your pain and not on picking your cross up and following Christ, is because he's scared of that so that. Because when you realize, when the Son sets you free, you are free indeed. When you realize that, you step out of shame, you step out from behind the walls that you've built and the masks you've put on and the addictions that you've tried to deal with your pain through. You step out of that and you step into your purpose. That's the greatest kingdom impact you can have on your life and on the lives of others, so that many lives will be saved. When you release that, you move from being a victim to being a victor. You move from bondage to freedom. You move from shame to purpose. Revelation 12:11 is another verse that is reflective of this. It says, it's talking about the martyrs at the end times. It says, they triumphed over him, the accuser. I put that in brackets because that's what they refer to the enemy, a verse or two earlier. And I think that's a perfect word for the devil, the accuser, because that's what he does. He puts these accusing thoughts in our head. He uses words that's spoken into our lives from other people. But we do a very good job of doing that ourselves. He uses that to accuse us, to keep us focused on our pain, so that we will not walk in our so that. They triumphed over the accuser by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink back from death. Taking up your cross daily, that's a form of death. That's dying daily. So are you shrinking back from daily dying to live your purpose? You can do that when you realize that your story is not your crud. Your story is that you have a Redeemer. when your story is told through the blood of the Lamb, when your testimony is told through the blood of the Lamb, you are free to live your purpose. It is difficult to do that because the enemy convinces us that stepping out into that is stepping out into the unknown. And it sort of is. Without faith, it's impossible to please God, right? But the thing is, when we step out into that, trusting God's lead, we are not trusting in the unknown. We are trusting in the arms of Christ to catch us. But the enemy will tell you that is difficult. And it is difficult sometimes to muster up that faith to do that. But you know what? It's more difficult to stay and wallow in your pain and self-pity. That's way more difficult than stepping out into the unknown, into the arms of Jesus. If you have been dealing with your pain in an unhealthy way for a long time, I would equate it to someone who broke their arm, like I said earlier, and never got it set. So it healed, but it didn't heal properly, and you probably isn't fully functional. So if you want to regain the function of that arm, what do you have to do? You have to go to the doctor and go through the pain of having that rebroken so that it can be reset. And then you can give it time to heal. That's really kind of what counseling is like, right? It's dipping into that emotional pain and re-breaking that open. And you have to kind of relive that and go through those painful moments so that it can be set right and you can use your arm to the fullest function. That's what healing is, and that's why we want to avoid it. That's why we want to numb our pain, but it is not the abundant life of John 10:10. So I want to encourage you to step out, to let go of your pain, to forgive yourself, to forgive others, to receive the forgiveness that you need, because God has a plan for you. And the enemy wants you to keep focusing back on that. Our story will ultimately motivate us to live out our ministry, whether that is vocationally or whether that's simply being a part of this church and loving on people out there. You don't have to. If you are a believer, you are a minister of the gospel, no matter your profession. It is important that we understand that and step into that. But we can't fully do that until we fully surrender our right to our offense and to the offense of others. The reason people are in ministry is because they've learned this. It's because they've pushed back against their pain. And the amazing thing is, the enemy wants you to believe that your story is your pain, right? Your story is your pain. And so you don't want to share your story because it hurts. But the reality of it is, my pain has motivated me to do this ministry, and I have not shared with you once what that is. Because my story is not my pain. My story is the fact that I have a Redeemer who bought and paid and became that pain so that I could step into my purpose. I don't need to focus on the crud. I just need to focus on Jesus. So if you're believing that you're going to have to tell all of this whatever in order to minister to people, that's a lie from the pit of hell. That is a lie from the pit of hell. So I would encourage you today, if you felt like you're stuck in one of those lists, or maybe God has pricked your heart with something other, some other awareness that you feel like you're stuck in, man, find somebody to pray with. Come down here and pray if you want. Pray in your own pew and then tell somebody. But step into the arms of Jesus and the purpose that he has for you. That is where the abundant life is found. The band is going to come up and we're going to sing a few songs about that. Just what it means to step into that abundance. This is a song about the labels that the enemy likes to put on us. but they are not who we are. It's a song that's going to be on our new CD that will be coming out very, very soon. And if you find yourself there, just remember that is not who you are. If you are in Christ.
Don't